Hello there. Hopefully you can see my presentation. Apologies for the delay in getting connected.
Oh, sorry, two
Okay.
seconds. Mm,
How does that look?
Yeah, we can
Perfect.
see it now.
Okay, great. So apologies for the delay in getting connected there. So my name is Grant Caley. I'm the UK and Ireland Chief Technologist for NetApp, and I'm going to give you an overview really of NetApp's data fabric strategy. I will pause just to make sure the slide's loading quickly enough. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So NetApp have been around since 1992. We're a 25-year-old company, 5.5 billion in revenue. But really, as a company, we've changed significantly over the last probably 3 to 5 years. We've become a leader in 4 of the Gartner Magic Quadrants around about data storage and data storage infrastructure. We've become the #1 commercial storage vendor in OpenStack, for example. And actually this year, we're now the largest growing SAN vendor, which if you've known NetApp for any period of time, you probably remember us as a NAS vendor. But we're now the largest growing SAN vendor. And that's mostly been down to the fact that our all-flash products have taken the #1 position in both the UK and across 7 countries in EMEA. So a real change in terms of the kind of strategy and the growth of NetApp. But actually, NetApp is much more than just the delivery of SAN and NAS storage. And over the next few slides, I'm really going to give you an idea as to where that strategy sits in today's marketplace. So, as I mentioned, our strategy has definitely changed over the last few years. Our tagline now is to become really the data authority for the hybrid cloud, because we recognize that as customers, you're more and more abstracting the value from infrastructure to be much more application and data focused. And to do that, we've really taken a strategy focus about making sure that we can deliver modernization of your existing data centers, so bringing the latest technologies there, but also helping build out next generation data center capabilities. And really making sure that we can take not just that modernization and next generation data center options that you might have, but also help you take that into the cloud and deliver a hybrid cloud strategy. So NetApp's overall strategy, which we call the data fabric, is really to combine those capabilities and then to make that available for customers to take to market. So as I mentioned, when we look at the 3 kind of corners, if you like, the first on the right-hand side is very much about modernizing data storage with the latest flash technologies, making sure that it's automatable, can be self-service driven, can integrate into existing applications. But then also we are looking to help customers build a next generation data center. So building things like private cloud-like environments, object data lake technologies, building quality of service and zero-touch storage capabilities. Really kind of getting to that point of IT infrastructure in the data center being self-drivable, automatable, to kind of, to relieve the effort which you have to put into the operational management of this type of environment. But then now we do recognize that customers are fully moving into the cloud. Not necessarily all into the cloud. Some customers obviously very much staying on premise, but a combination of SaaS applications using hyperscaler, AWS and Azure, and then really wanting to bridge the gap between all of those different environments for deployment and make sure that you can deliver data from any of those as the business demand drives. So offering this 3 kind of pronged approach to how we can help customers irrespective of what you're actually trying to do and where you're trying to do it. It's interesting when you look at how the data center has changed over the last couple of years, and we very much see this in most customer environments. So looking back to 2000, 2010, customers were deploying dedicated infrastructure to provide for application storage. And actually that's still the case. There are still many uses for dedicated infrastructure, such as performance, low latency, certain mission critical applications where you want to make sure you have the maximum control over those environments. But we do see customers moving towards a virtualized landscape as well. So server virtualization, storage virtualization, network virtualization, WAN virtualization, really the abstraction of value above the infrastructure so that you can achieve one of a few benefits. It might be to reduce the costs of the physical infrastructure by getting maximum utilization, but equally it's also about really getting into the idea of a programmable or composable, as some people call it, data center where you can effectively configure and reconfigure an environment, because the total environment is software. This infrastructure is software virtualized, the applications are software on top, the data is sitting on top of that. And with that type of environment, you can get into a much more flexible configuration capability through the use of virtualization. But we do now find that customers are also wanting to be and able to deliver IT as a service, and we can probably blame Amazon for this. The ability to just click in Amazon, use your credit card to buy compute and storage and application capabilities or platforms is something that has really meant that the focus has gone from not just them being able to deliver that, but CIOs looking back at their own IT organization and saying, we need to be like this. We don't necessarily have to use the hyperscalers, but I want my own IT services to be as easy to consume, to be as agile, as quick in terms of how we can do that. So we definitely see customers on a full journey and having a full set of IT infrastructure, whether it's dedicated, virtualized, or sitting in the cloud, and wanting to become more service-like in terms of how IT is actually delivered. And one of the key things that sits on top of this, and you can probably ask yourself where you are on this, this graph anyway, but is actually making sure that automation is driven across this, and then ultimately policy-driven automation, which allows the systems to start making some of the decisions themselves to enable that IT. So one thing we do find, and this is something that's happened over the last 20 years or so, is that we are finding companies becoming more data-centric in terms of what they're doing. So it used to be about the systems that stored the applications and the data. Then it very much became about the applications, and that's really been the paradigm for the last 10 or 15 years. It's been all about the application. And now what we're starting to see is it's all about the data that sits within those applications. We're seeing the rise of things like big data, of IoT, of the capabilities of bringing together data. But when you look at it from an IT perspective, that creates a huge challenge as to how do you support all the thousands of applications that are coming along, the hundreds of uses and different ways the business wants to use data. It's not an easy thing to actually do. Definitely when you look at, and IDC and KPMG and Gartner have put many surveys out there, but the restrictions which they've come across have been very much around about 3 different areas. The first is that budgets are not increasing, they're likely to remain very static. So how do you cope with these new growth of requirements, data applications, the growth of data itself? The skills to understand these new applications which are coming in, so the MongoDBs, the NoSQLs, big data applications, analytics, Hadoop, the range of new things that's coming out is very complex, and actually the skills on premise are not really keeping up with that, and it's very difficult to hire these new skills in order to manage these applications. And equally, the time that is required, that the business is expecting of IT to deliver new capability, is accelerating, and that's one of the reasons that we've seen a recent rise in shadow IT. It's around about how does the business get the capability it needs, and that demand is very much pushed back on IT itself to be able to deliver that. So when you look at how data is sitting out there, it's not sitting in just one location anymore. It used to be just sitting in the data center on equipment that you knew. It's now sitting in multiple locations across your business, in data centers, remote offices, and that data has value. It's not just in the central location. It's also now sitting in distributed and multiple cloud locations. So you've got data in SaaS applications, you've got data sitting in hyperscalers and service providers. So very much the distributed nature of data is creating a challenge in itself. Data is becoming dynamic, and it's changing at a rate which we've never seen before. There's a car company, German car company, who had generated about 4 petabytes of data in their total 20-odd plus year history. Sorry, more than 20 years, the history. And actually within the last year, they've generated the same amount of data again because of the research they've been putting into self-driving cars. And that really is just a kind of an indication of the growth that data and the requirement that data is putting. So it's becoming that much more difficult. We're also seeing a requirement for things that come out of GDPR, so knowing where your data is, who has access to your data, what you're storing in that data. So a lot of new requirements coming in terms of how you manage data itself. And the sources of data are changing. It used to be, a few years ago, most data was sitting in a structured database or application of some description. And then we certainly had a rise of a lot of unstructured data, and a lot of that is obviously on NetApp technology today. But now we're starting to see the rise of object technologies, of machine learning, streaming technologies, all sorts of new data sources that are generating data that we need to manage and that IT needs to manage. I'll just pause there to make sure everybody's still hearing me okay. Are we good?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, great, thanks. Nothing worse than talking to yourself for an hour and not realizing nobody heard anything. So when you look at all of those requirements for data, what is it that people, customers are looking for? Well, irrespective of where you want to put your data, in the cloud, on-premise, remote offices, and the requirements you have, you are looking to make sure that data is secure. So you're looking for things like encryption, proper access controls on top of that data. You're looking to make sure that you have high availability data recovery options, data disaster recovery options. Just because you put your data into the cloud doesn't mean that you can ignore these enterprise requirements for the data which you're storing. The other thing that customers are looking for is really to make sure they're getting the most efficient use out of how they store their data. So on-premise, that means simple things like storage efficiency technologies on arrays, compression, deduplication, thin provisioning, all those technologies that we have today. But it's also about making sure that you can make that kind of data management operationally efficient as well. So bringing in automation, making sure that the technology you are deploying are simplistic in themselves. It's very much easy to put data out there, but the cost of actually storing data, for example, in AWS is very expensive. About 95% of the cost that comes out of using services in AWS is actually down to the data storage itself, how much you're paying for EBS storage. So you're looking for not just make sure that the data is operationally efficient, is efficient on premise, but you need to make sure you extend that efficiency into the hyperscale environments as well. And then as you put data out there, there's a raft of new technologies which are coming out. We've seen things like, for example, we released 15 terabyte SSD drives this year. We're expecting 32s if anybody can afford them, because they are still very expensive in the market. We've got NVMe technologies, NVMe over fabrics. We have storage class memory technologies. All of these new technologies that are coming out bring advantages. But what you need to make sure is that when you implement those technologies, you're not creating silos that operationally make your business more complex to run. So that's something that you have to think about as well, is how do you future-proof environments to be able to take advantage of new technology without creating more complexity as you do that. And then ultimately, you need to make sure that you have freedom of choice. You can deploy data on-premise, bare metal, virtualized environments. You can put it into a hyperscaler and take advantage of services there, or across a service provider that you use. But what you want to make sure is that from an operational perspective, you have freedom of choice to move that data when and where you require based on whatever business metric works at the time. So if you take all of those capabilities together, that's really what you could think of as a data fabric. The idea of putting this fabric across all of the different environments that you have for data, and then bringing these capabilities on top of that. And really that's where NetApp come into play, and our strategy comes into play. Our strategy is to create this data fabric that allows you to deploy data not just in the enterprise IT environment, but to build next generation environments, quality of service driven, object data lakes, those types of things, but equally deploy data into public clouds and across multiple clouds. So irrespective of where you deploy your data, you want to make sure that you bring those same capabilities, so being able to secure your data, make it efficient, future-proof it, and have freedom of choice. And that's what NetApp's data fabric is about. It's about giving you endpoints that you can deploy data onto in each of these different types of environments, and then bring data mobility together, bring data management, and all of those capabilities to sit across that, so that from an operational perspective, you're creating a simplistic environment, even though you're virtually creating your data center across all of these different deployment options and locations. So what does that actually mean from NetApp in terms of where we can provide specific value? Well, when we actually look at different options that customers have, I've mentioned already that on the right-hand side, We have customers who are actually looking to build commodity hardware environments. And in that case, they're not looking for appliances from NetApp, they're looking for software-defined capability. So we've software-defined all of our products to allow people to deploy them on anybody's hardware, third-party hardware, x86 hardware, in the cloud, for example, and to be able to deliver those same capabilities that we've brought to the market around about security and efficiency and those types of things, but build it on a software platform instead. That doesn't mean we still don't have our best-of-breed appliances, which bring that software value and tie it in closely to the hardware, and that's something which we're still continuing to do. But we also offer consumption options, which are things like converged infrastructure platforms, so that they're pre-engineered, single support call for support from, for the storage, the networking, the server, and the virtualization there, making it much simpler to deploy. And then actually, and I think it's today, we launch our hyperconverged platform, which really brings not just the kind of concepts of converged, so pre-engineered stack, but also brings simplicity and scalability into that solution, allowing you to simply repeat infrastructure environments. And then finally, we offer a capability that allows customers to deploy data into something as a service, so SaaS, for example. If you put data into Office 365, can you still provide a level of data protection on top of that? So NetApp really offer all of these consumption choices, software-defined, best-of-breed appliances, converged infrastructure, hyper-converged infrastructure, or kind of connecting into as-a-service environments to provide the capabilities that I've talked about previously that you really need when you're building a data fabric. It very much is, in terms of how easy it's to deploy. As you go from as a service, they're very simple to deploy, but less flexibility. And as you go to the right-hand side, deploying software on commodity hardware, that's harder to deploy, but the flexibility is great. And really where you sit and what you want to deploy is up to you and what meets your business and IT requirements. We've also recently changed how you can actually procure that. I mean, the one thing that the cloud has brought is this concept of needing and wanting consumption-based pricing, being able to effectively pay just in time as you grow the environment. So we ourselves have changed from not just offering solutions as a CapEx purchase, as we have done in the past, but also offering consumption-based pricing. So I can say, I just want I/O and capacity, and that's the metric that I pay on. I'm not interested in what platforms deliver that. I just want to pay on a consumption-based model. So we reflected that also in terms of some of the capabilities that we're bringing to the market to allow customers to change their consumption from a procurement perspective, as well as the consumption options from an actual platform perspective as well. To put in a little bit of detail here, and I won't spend too long on this really, we've got a range of platforms that fit into the categories I've talked about. So modernizing your existing data center with the latest all-flash technologies, our NAS and SAN, our E-series providing the fastest low latency storage or providing the densest archive commodity SAN storage. Our converged infrastructure stack, and we added a FlexPod SolidFire version, which is a full Cisco hardware stack, no NetApp hardware, but using our SolidFire software to provide the storage management on top of that. So really a range of options for modernizing the data center. And when it comes to building the next generation data center, we've had our object technology storage grid, our SolidFire platform, which allows you to build quality of service, multi-tenancy, fully automatable storage for delivering cloud, private cloud-like environments. And as I mentioned, we launched today our NetApp HCI platform. And then in the hybrid world, being able to back up to the cloud using our AltaVolta plans and still make sure that you're efficient and secure in the data that you do. Or for some customers who want to take advantage of the hyperscalers but don't want to put their data into the hyperscaler, we have the NetApp private storage solution. So you still retain ownership and control of your data in a co-location facility, but you can map onto the hyperscale compute to allow you to take advantage of that. So a full range of physical platforms to deploy there. And across the top of that is the management suite, such as On-Command Insight, which is heterogeneous across multiple vendors, storage server, fabric, VM, and application management, monitoring, chargeback. And that works across not just on-premise environments, but allows you to inventory, performance analyze, cost control, infrastructure that you have on-premise and also in AWS and Azure, for example, to give you a more fully complete view. And of course, automation is, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the key components, and we have automation tools to allow you to do that. And also tools which will integrate into the application to allow you to drive provisioning, backup, recovery, and DR from an application level view rather than from an infrastructure level view underneath. And then recently, we also launched a service level management tool, which is about abstracting infrastructure provisioning and making it much more service level management driven. So a full range of capability there. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not just about the physical platforms and the software that sits there. It's also about being able to abstract that capability into software so that you can build software-defined capabilities. So for example, when you're building the next generation data center, our object platform you can deploy as an appliance, but you can also deploy as software on top of bare metal or VMware or other virtualization platforms. You can also deploy our ONTAP platform, which has been our mainstay for the last 20 years, as a software-defined version, which you can deploy on top of VMware, on top of an HCI solution, to give you the same capabilities, but on top of somebody else's hardware platform. And then when you look at the cloud, and this is actually an area where we've started to accelerate our capabilities to offer options here. You know, we have the ability to deploy our ONTAP platform into Azure, and it helps reduce the cost of the storage in Azure by taking the storage efficiency features, but also increasing agility. And it works in AWS, in IBM, in other platforms as well. A software version of our backup to the cloud appliance. But the two interesting ones that we launched recently were firstly our Office 365 backup and archive capabilities. So Office 365 doesn't offer backup and archive. It offers deletion retention for 30 days, but beyond that, you're on your own. So we offer a service that you can launch from the marketplace, and that allows you to back up those Office 365 environments back on premise or maybe into AWS, for example. And recently, we also announced the launch of an NFS as a service, which is effectively an NFS service offered out of Azure, but it's actually based on NetApp technology. So we're extending that reach of how we can provide data management and data protection into not just physical platforms, but into these new cloud-like environments as well, and SaaS applications. And actually, we're adding another SaaS application, Salesforce, probably coming at the end of the year, and then also another range of SaaS applications in terms of how we can integrate data protection and data management going forwards as well. Cloud Sync is the latest one. Sorry, it's not the latest one, but Cloud Sync is one which we launched probably about 6 months ago. It allows you to replicate data from on-premise analytics data into AWS to allow you to take advantage of the analytics service that the hyperscalers can bring. Because one thing they do bring is massively scalable compute. So we offer you the option of syncing your analytics data from on-premise in the most efficient and fastest manner to AWS, apply the compute there, and then we'll make sure that we keep the results synced back on premise again. So, you know, quite a big range of services there in terms of where we can take data management, but really making sure that irrespective of whether you want to do data deployment on premise, in a service provider, in a SaaS application or a hyperscaler, we have a range of capabilities that come back to that secure, efficient, future-proofing, and you know, freedom of choice in terms of how you can actually deploy it. One thing that the data fabric does bring, and this is quite important, is that all of those products that I've talked about, all of those kind of software products, physical products, cloud-based versions of those products, we're building and have built, in the most part, the connectivity to allow you to move data between those environments, because moving data in itself is one of the complex tasks and one of the difficult tasks to do. And if you have to create or manage a new technology every time you want to move between two different environments, operationally that makes things very difficult. So we're building and have built our Snap Mirror into most of these products. We're probably about 95% of the way there in terms of completion of that, to allow you to move data between any of these platforms, whether it's between our software platforms, appliances, converged, hyper-converged, or into our cloud-based services as well. Snap Mirror is the engine that allows you to move that production data so that you can make the choice as to where that data should be. Should it be on a private cloud environment? Should it be moved to one of our other SAM platforms? Should it be moved into AWS, for example? And Snap Mirror is the enabling technology that allows you to do that. So operationally, it's very simplistic. And it's also a thin replication technology. So it takes the advantages of data that's already been compressed, deduped, etc., and doesn't take any extra data that's not needed. It makes it a very efficient technology, particularly when you're looking at moving data into cloud environments. But it's not just about the primary movement of data. It's also about how do we tier data in terms of providing cost effectiveness and making sure that data stays on the tier of storage which is the most important. So for example, flash storage, if it's in the data center, for operational performance and the advantage. But you don't want to necessarily keep your whole data set on that flash storage. So we've built into the back end, if you like, of our products, the ability to cold tier data out and to do it automatically. using the S3 protocol. And what that means is that you can cold tier data into an object platform from your primary platforms, but it still appears to the user and to the application as though it's still available as a primary data set, if you like. And that allows you to tier it into AWS through our NPS solution, but also to cold tier data down to an object platform that you've maybe deployed on premise, our software or appliance-based storage grid platform, for example. So really helping you manage and reduce the cost of primary storage and making sure that data is sitting on the correct tier of storage. And actually, as we go forwards and implement things like storage class memory into our arrays, and it appears into servers, this type of tiering capability is going to be, of absolute criticality in terms of managing the cost and the deployment of data to make sure that it's actually sitting in the correct place. From a manageability perspective, you need to make sure whichever platform you deploy from a consumption option, so software, best-of-breed appliance, converged, hyper-converged, you have the manageability capability, if you like, in terms of delivering across that. So we have a framework which we loosely call the on-command framework, which most of our management products sit into. And really that's about bringing a few different things to the management of those options and wherever the data might be. So the first is around about hybrid cloud management. So that's management of on-premise infrastructure, whether it's on NetApp or EMC, HP, Pure, etc. It doesn't really matter whether it's sitting in physical servers or virtualized servers, or whether you need to tag and manage it via an application, or even whether that application is now sitting in AWS, for example. How do I manage and get a grip on the cost of my solution in AWS, the performance aspects, etc. So our on-command insight tool delivers capability across all of those environments, and then lets you manage things like cost and chargeback, change control, management reporting, performance analysis, risk analysis, all of these different features that you need in an environment to make sure that you deliver capability in the best way possible. We do recognize, though, that customers are not just deploying NetApp management tools. They've maybe built their own environments, whether they're scripted, whether they're using orchestration tools, whether they're using some frameworks, such as BMC frameworks, or from other vendors as well. So in every single product that we develop, the physical products, the software products, the management products, we're making them API driven so that you can integrate or abstract the capabilities that they bring into any one of the management environments that you might have. And we have a full range of APIs to allow you to do that. And we have a full range of software development kits to allow you to integrate all of those components. And really that helps you get to the point of manageability from either through a GUI, which is the easiest way, or through some form of deployment engine or management engine or configuration engine that you want to deploy as well. We realize that service management is becoming a big thing in terms of how you manage that, how you automatically create tickets, how you then provide into that ticket resolution to aid quick resolution. We have a plugin already for ServiceNow, which allows automatic generation of tickets into ServiceNow from across the framework, but also something that provides the quickest link to resolution. So when there's a problem, performance, for example, clicking on the link will provide a full view of the performance as it sits there and where some of the problems might be, so that you can get quicker resolution. And that's something which we have not just for ServiceNow. ServiceNow is the one we have a plugin for, but you can integrate that into any service management environment with maybe a little bit of professional services effort around about that. Key, though, has been, and this is something that NetApp have done for a long time, has been around about application integration. So not just about integrating with the traditional applications such as Oracle, VMware, Red Hat, SQL Server, for example. And we've done that for many years, allowing you to provide backup, recovery, disaster recovery, replication, etc., and management of applications through a framework. But now we integrate all of the capability that our platforms provide into a range of other applications as well. There are actually many more than I've put on the screen here, but this was just to give you an idea as to the range. So for example, integrating with MongoDB, Hadoop, Docker, Splunk, Jenkins, Ansible, Chef, Puppet, and into OpenStack. The benefit of abstracting the infrastructure into the application is that it removes complexity. So an application admin, for example, if you're deploying OpenStack, and you want to deploy persistent storage on the back end of that, or Docker, for example, you don't want to have to put in a service request which goes to the storage team, which then provisions storage, which then provides it back. You want to be able to do it through your framework or your application itself, and that just speeds up delivery. it reduces errors, removes complexity, etc. So we provide a range of capabilities to allow for that application integration of all the consumption options that we provide as well. Automation, I mentioned that before, but we have an automation framework that allows you to pull these components together. Initially, most customers that deploy it use it for storage automation, so they automate this complexity. So instead of, say, 50 to 100 tasks to create storage, to back it up, snapshot it, replicate it, build all of those types of things, why not automate all of that and make it standardized, simple to do, and also reduce the errors that happen in this environment. And we've got actually many customers, many large customers as well, who have deployed that framework to allow them to reduce the complexity of the storage infrastructure which they have. But that framework also integrates into other frameworks and other application environments to allow you to pull together a range of different options and automation capabilities. And then the on-command framework, it does deliver, which you'd expect, and where it started is around about making sure that you can manage all of these consumption options. So we have, direct element GUIs for the products themselves, so you can manage them directly. But we also have aggregated capabilities to allow you to manage across environments, multiple clusters, to bring in monitoring, to be able to bring in alerting, and to integrate that into your environment. So that holistically, when you look at the management, you're able to integrate fully into your environment to kind of meet the business requirements and make sure that you're responding to any requests for provisioning, any issues, anything else, and bring together all of the tools to allow you to do that. So the on-command framework provides that across our full capability. So when I look at where NetApp are really providing value to customers, it's easy to get bogged down in the detail of the applications, the software we have, the configurations, the arrays, the different products in the cloud, etc. But really, what we've looked at, and this is really where the data fabric is kind of more focusing, I suppose, from a customer perspective, is how do we actually solve the challenges which you have within your business. So it may be challenges around about lack of insight or control of your environment. It might be around about the fact that you're looking to just simplify and automate. It might be that you're looking to to get a handle on and optimize the unstructured data which you have across your different data centers. Maybe you're looking to develop and do big data applications, work on analytics data, or you're looking to transform into a DevOps environment where you're not just having your IT guys develop the applications, but they're then also running those applications in a true kind of DevOps fashion. Or maybe you're just trying to become cloud-like. You like what Amazon can do, but you'd rather do it on premise, so you're trying to build out your own cloud hosting infrastructure, a private cloud. But then, we have to recognize that the cloud is an environment that customers want to move to. So how do I integrate all of my capability and extend my virtual data center into the cloud? And then on top of that, I still need to make sure that I optimize my data, I protect and secure that data. So we have many use cases that we can focus on, and certainly do Contact Ultimate or ourselves if you want to look at this, as to how we bring the technologies I've talked about together to really kind of answer some of these use cases in terms of what you're looking to do. But just to kind of reiterate, it really is about this concept of the data fabric. And the data fabric's not a term that we maybe did coin it, but we've not trademarked it or decided that it's a term that is NetApp's. We think the data fabric as a concept is something that many vendors will actually start to build onto. But the NetApp version is really about making sure that you can deploy data in your own enterprise IT environment. You can build next generation capability. You can deploy into the cloud, into SaaS applications, into IaaS type or PaaS applications in the cloud. And the concept of the data fabric is to make sure that we bring together mobility of data across those environments, and then make sure that that data is secure, efficient, future-proof, and provides you with the freedom of choice in terms of what you might look to do. So I'll say thank you at that point. If you'd like to contact me, certainly do drop me a note, grant.caley@netapp.com, or there's my Twitter handle as well. But thank you very much.